Tahuzun. Good day, everyone, and welcome. We are at the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitors Center. Today's presentation is produced by Nenana, which is a nonprofit that serves as the voice for Alaska Native elders throughout the interior. Nenana collaborates with the Morris Thompson Center and Tanana Chiefs Conference to bring you the Our People Speak series, with generous support from Doyan Limited. The series features elders and culture bearers discussing seasonal Alaska Native cultural topics. Today we have esteemed guests LaVerne Demientieff and Jessica Black. So glad you're here. Welcome. And today they're going to share about the connections between health and wellness and the continuation of cultural practices. Today I'm your host, Dewey Hoffman, Kashlia Sauza from Ruby, living here in Fairbanks. And also welcome to our guests here in the theater. Before we start, just a few quick announcements. This episode is being recorded and will be released March 10th at noon on the Morris Thompson Center website, Facebook, and YouTube channel. You can revisit this program again anytime you like on those platforms, watch our past programs, or other series we've produced. Also, at the end of the program, Pat will be just outside these doors here. We'd really appreciate if you would sign up for the email list and be notified of our upcoming programs. There's also comment cards. We always appreciate receiving your feedback. There are links to donate to support programs like these on the Morris Thompson Center and Nenana website. And Pat will have a QR code available to scan as well. So that's all our announcements for today. So would we like to begin with introducing ourselves?
Yeah. Thank you, Dewey Masicho. Shojri Jessica Blackoji, Gwichaje Gwatsan Ithli, Gatanan Gwichi, Shahan Marlene Shiti Bill, Shitsu Shitsi Sarah Isaac John Gwichaje Gwatsan Hisha. In my Gwich'in language, I said, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Black. My family's from Fort Yukon, but I now make my home in Tanana, Fairbanks, on the traditional homelands of the lower Tanana Dene, and I'd like to thank them for their past, present, and future stewardship of these beautiful homelands. My mother is Marlene, my father is Bill, and my grandparents are the late Sarah and Isaac John of Gwichaje, Fort Yukon, and I have a daughter, Aurora, and my partner is Danny from Vajranko, Arctic Village. Glad to be here.
Let's see.
Hello everyone. Haleg Sajre. You can call me Haleg or LaVerne Demientieff. Haleg means springtime. Degatanatlan. I'm Degatana Thabascan. My family is originally from Holy Cross in Anvik. And I grew up in Nenana and Anchorage. I currently work at the University of Alaska Fairbanks in the social work program, and I have one son who is older, 28, and also living here in Fairbanks, and so happy to be here. Dogadin, Shugadistin, grateful.
Asi, Dogadin. So to kick off our discussion today, it might be good to first kind of share our own interpretation about what culture means to us. So would either of you like to go first?
Sure, I could go. So I'm really glad to be sharing the stage with LaVerne and Dewey. I think we all share something in common, which is we love our languages and we're learners. And that to me is a really powerful example of culture in action. Learning your language and taking that step to do something that's really meaningful within your own cultural context. A little bit more about me. I also am a professor at UAF, and a lot of my research focuses on the intersection of tribal governance and well-being. So what do tribes do to create opportunities for well-being for their people? What kind of decisions do tribes make to advance the well-being of their people? And what kind of cultural opportunities do they create to increase well-being? And language is a really powerful example. Creating opportunities to learn one's language. And briefly, you know, Alaska and much of the U.S. has a really traumatic history of stripping language from our native people. And so it's not a coincidence that we didn't grow up learning our language. It was very intentional in our school experiences. You know, our languages were not promoted, they weren't honored. So we had to create those opportunities for ourselves, or go to bilingual class, sing in our dance group. So they were woven in. But now, you know, I am making it my sort of life purpose to create opportunities within my work for our children, our adults, our elders to naturally seek out what they want to practice, whether that be language or tanning moose hide or cutting fish. So culture could mean a lot of different things, and cultural practices vary across different groups. But I think there's some common ones that are resurging, reawakening. And language is one of them. I also, I think, you know, traditional markings, that's another cultural practice that is reawakening. You will see women and, you know, some men that have their traditional markings, and they have very significant meanings to them. So it is a broad question with many different answers, but those are things that come to mind for me. And I think there, you know, is a real reawakening of our culture and our practices. And it was never put to sleep. It was put to sleep, but it was never lost. And it was, you know, there was reasons for that. But I'm seeing a real reawakening, and it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Quincy.
Good then. I can relate to so much of that. My parents are the late Rudy and Alice Demientieff, and they both were grew up in Holy Cross area, and were part of the Catholic mission there. And so we didn't grow up learning our language, and that's something that, you know, in my early 20s I started to do, and that has been transformative for me, for my own healing, and I think that helped me form my identity and my strength to work on my language with elders and the community. And I talk a lot about culture and the impacts of culture on our health and wellness in a lot of different formats. And I was just, you know, I was lucky enough to, when I did my dissertation at the university, I did it on wellness among the Daguetana Athabascan people. And one of the things that always sticks to me, and I think this kind of connects to the wellness culture, is really thinking about, I asked my late mentor, Jim Dementi, what wellness was from his experience and perspective. And he said, wellness is the way that we live our lives. And this was years and years and years ago. And at the time, I didn't connect to it in a way, you know, that it was something that he said that I felt like, you know, this is so important. And as the years passed, I realized how profound that statement was. That wellness is the way that we live our lives. It is our culture. It is our what we do within the seasons, and how we come together as community and participate in our traditional activities. All of that is how we live well. And so, again, culture, I think there's so many protective aspects of culture that help us to, where we can draw strength from, and also just support. I was thinking of some practices in my area, and there's one called Saholvid, which means tea partner. And when I think about that practice, that was connected to mask dance in my area, and one of the premises behind it is that elders and parents and grandparents would connect people together in a partnership, but that partnership was like for life, and it wasn't a romantic partnership. It was a friendship. It was a mentoring. It was like, some people refer to it as like godparents, but two people were connected together pretty much for life through ceremonial process. I remember my mom talking about the tea partner when I was very little, her tea partner, coming to the community and bringing her gifts into the potlatch, and so there was a lot of fun in that. But if you think about just what that entailed, right? So people had tea partners within the community, and then people had tea partners across communities, and it incorporated sharing and caring, right, taking care of each other. So I recently, well, maybe about 5 years ago now, I was in Anvik, and someone said, I need to go help my tea partner who got stuck on the snow machine, and if you think about the power of that, like the responsibility for each other, the sharing and caring, the reciprocity that happens, giving your very best to people over a lifetime. And I was so in awe of that because my mom talked about it. And then as I started doing work at the university and realizing that as I was doing this work around wellness with elders, that they started telling me also about practices like the tea partner. And not only just the tea partner, and there's so many practices throughout Alaska, our cultural practices that really teach us about how to be responsible for each other and how to care for each other, and sharing our very best and laughing together, and all of those things create like this web of connection and strength and support. And that's really powerful. So I think, culture is so much. It's food, it's music, it's language, it's how we are, what we do season by season. And so it really is our way of life. So I would just, yeah.
Yeah, what Jim mentioned about living, it kind of brings to mind what our relatives downriver in the Bethel area have developed, the Chali Chalak initiative, which is like a holistic view, you might be familiar with it, of the way we genuinely live, like living in wellness and in connection with the land and each other. And I think that's a really good way to think about it. It's kind of a lifelong learning how to unpack these things and how to continue it and sustain yourself. It's also, when I think about culture, I really like to, what I get excited about is going home to Ruby for our summer culture camps. So I've been going for the past several years, and my daughter was asking me, what is culture camp? Why do we need a culture camp? And that goes back to the whole host of our history and how our communities shifted when schools were brought in and Alaska became a state, and just curious about why would we need culture camps today?
Well, for some of the very reasons that you shared, Dewey, just understanding our history, and not as, yes, collectively as Native people, but also as communities, as individuals. I remember before my grandma passed, she sat me down and she told me some very important things about our family and our community, things that I needed to know as I navigated into adulthood. So I think understanding history, but also not just the, traumatic aspects, but the really positive things, all the gifts that are within our community, the people that come to culture camp and cook for you, and those that help you set up your tent, those really quiet people in the back that are chopping wood. You start to see within the context of your community all the many gifts that exist. And together we make something beautiful, which is culture camp. And even if we've experienced immense loss, such as land, many children were displaced during these periods of time, whether through boarding school or adopted out, and people return home to learn. And language, language was suppressed actively, and we had to put our languages to sleep in order to protect ourselves, protect our children. And so we go back to be in a safe space on the land where language makes sense. A lot of our elders say, if you want to learn your language, go out on the land. It's very connected. And then I'm thinking about living here in Fairbanks, Tanun. Many of our children that grow up in the cities, they don't have, not all of them have a chance to return home to to wherever they're from. So I'm from Fort Yukon, I grew up here. Maybe my family doesn't have the resources to go home every summer. Maybe we don't have a boat to get out on the land. And so when you create community culture camps, you make that opportunity accessible for all children, those that live in the community, those that live outside, and together we're all from Ruby, we're all from, Holy Cross, we're all from Fort Yukon. So I think culture camps are a way to sort of create some equity so everybody has a chance to learn, but also to really celebrate, around the fire, eating really good food and laughter and just healing on the land. The land knows what you need and it counts on you to know what it needs. So I could say so many things about why we need it, but there's so many beautiful aspects. And in this fast-paced world of like cell phones and computers and the way we live our lives, going to work, most of our lives, 8 to 5 type of thing, going to camp allows us to just sort of like slow down, get in tune with the birds, listen to our elders without being on our phone, listen to our young people and what they have to say. So that intergenerational space that's created is really critical for our wellness and for the land and the animals. We begin to understand things, as we listen to the land and the water. So I could say a lot of different things, but it's so good for so many different reasons.
I'll add to that too.
Please.
I was just thinking of, and I often think of the elders who, and my mentors, and just the elders who, worked really hard and tirelessly to protect our cultural practices and our language through really difficult times. And I feel so grateful, and I just can't, I can't imagine how challenging that was to keep that. And they knew the importance. Our ancestors knew that we needed that for our own healing and well-being. And they found ways to protect that and to continue to pass it on and to continue to be able to do that. So today, someone like me can actually benefit from that. My own health and wellness has benefited from knowing my language and cultural practices. And also, I think about my responsibility now going forward, and how do I, am I part of that? Bringing that forward so that 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, people can benefit from our practices. And I think that culture camps help that, right? That intergenerational transmission, like Jessica said, just, really learning something, practicing it, and then sharing it back. And that's the goal. And that is what keeps us here. We learn it, we share it together, and we give back. And we learn it, we practice it, and we share it. And so I think culture camps really help with that.
Yeah, there's so many aspects that can be linked to wellness too, like, of course, physically hauling everyone's bags and packing and chopping wood and just all the movement that takes place, and sleeping on the ground. I always sleep really good when I'm out camping, all that fresh air and everything. Love to be sitting by the fire. That's my favorite channel. I always joke when we're sitting together, because normally you just do that on the TV.
Yeah.
But are there other things that come to mind about different types of wellness that maybe would be a part of that setting, or even if there was a specific gathering going on here in Fairbanks?
Yeah, I think, when we're talking about wellness, it's this big term, and I think LaVerne and I have spent a lot of time unpacking that term and how it's very different for Native people. I did my dissertation work for my PhD about what does well-being mean to people in the Yukon Flats. And in the larger sort of mainstream literature, it talked a lot about education, health, jobs, but within the Native context, at least where I'm from, the Yukon Flats, it was all about like sharing, caring, practicing your values, essentially. And so, and you hear a lot about wellness in the media and like people seeking wellness. And I think for us Native peoples, and I've seen it across different cultural groups, and geographic spaces. It's really about being in balance. And culture camps allow you to do that because you know, there's the spiritual aspect of being out on the land. And then if you do pray, in whatever way you pray, you know, whether that's religiously or in your own way or through song and dance, you have the opportunity to do that. So that spiritual aspect is embedded within culture camp. The physical, like you just said, chopping wood, hauling water, cleaning up, cooking food, checking net, those things allow you to be moving your body. Emotionally, you know, you are connected to everybody at camp, for better or worse. You know, you're living with them, you're learning how to live together, you're sharing sacred spaces intergenerationally. So emotionally, your needs are being met. And then what is the last realm? Let's see, physical, spiritual, emotional, social and mental. So you are interacting with people, you are learning maybe how to interact with elders, or maybe you're healing, you know, maybe the only way you've ever interacted is in a heightened state of like response, whereas at camp you have to really plan. You have to plan for weather, you know, is your tarp up if it starts pouring rain over your kitchen so you can all gather under it? Is your tent secured? If your job is to pack water, are you prepared? So you have a like really calm state of psychological, social, emotional wellness, because everything is being taught to you and you are being prepared to take care of yourself and each other. And so I always say, like, that wellness wheel is being met at culture camp through just the very nature of it, right? In the city where I live in the city and I love it here. I want to say I love Fairbanks. I love these homelands. I think it's beautiful. It's more, I have to be more intentional about how I meet those needs. So I'm part of a dance group that really meets a huge part of my well-being. I love it. Yeah. Singing, I've learned tons of new songs through, it's intertribal. So we have songs from like Nenana, Minto, Nenana, all over. Stevens Village, whoever's part of our group, wherever they're from, we ask them to bring their whole selves. We practice together. And so that's one way that I am able to meet those needs, and I share that gift with others. We are very open about people coming, learning, because of course what we really want to do is pass this knowledge on, right? So it doesn't get lost, like our elders did. You had talked about, like, they had to protect our language and they had to protect our teat partner ceremonies and make sure that they were taught, but like that they wouldn't be taken from us. So same idea, except for I feel very blessed that I didn't have to go through some of the things that my grandparents did. We have our own sets of challenges, but I'm very grateful for them keeping those things alive for us. And our song bearers, you know, we have gift, like I think of one of our dance group members, Sonny, one of his gifts is writing songs, and he also, you know, he teaches us. And so that reciprocity piece, relationship, and those are some of the ways that we can, you know, express our culture even when we're not necessarily living in our home communities. Yeah.
So we just had Festival of Native Arts, right? Did your group perform at that?
Yeah, we did, and it was so fun. And so some of our lead drummers are Norman Carlo, Travis Cole, Sonny Luke. So a lot of our songs come from their home communities because, you know, we want to make sure we always have permission to sing someone else's
It's
songs.
their knowledge base.
Yeah. So it was so fun, and we had a great time, because when we did the invitational, everybody came to the stage, and just the power and unity of like everybody singing together was amazing.
And what does that feel like, being both on the stage, but the preparation and the community that's created there?
Yeah, I'd say I'm more in the auntie role now. You know, I'm not considered like a young person, and I'm good with that. I love the role that I play. So like for example, a lot of young people reach out to me and ask if they can join. And I'm like, yes. And then I try to help them sort of prepare their regalia if they don't have any, so that they can feel confident, because they feel very proud wearing like a dress or a vest or slippers. So I always try to sort of coordinate behind the scenes. And we have Ariella Dickerson, who is one of our leaders, and Norman. And then we have Auntie Eliza Winfrey as like our auntie. So we all have different roles, and it's super fun. And I just want it to be a safe and loving space as people step into learning. And a lot of our singers that come join our group, they know songs from their own region. So we practice together, and Travis is usually in charge of getting us together and securing the space to practice. So we all have a role, and we don't worry about, like, if someone takes over, like if you guys were part of my dance group and Dewey's like, oh, we're going to perform next week, and he arranges it. We really are good with that, as long as people can make it, you know. So I think we have a good team approach to like carrying forward our culture. Yeah. And showing up for each other, really. Yeah.
So awesome.
It's fun. I love it. It's like, makes me really happy.
I always get teary-eyed at festival, especially seeing the little ones just
Yes.
so into it. Yeah. Did that bring any thoughts to mind, or?
Yeah, I just, in talking about wellness, I was thinking a lot of the things that I think about around wellness, especially like, I think we have this misconception, or maybe this feeling of like, I'll be well when I reach a certain point in time. And, I think about it like a river where, you're on the river sometimes and it's just so calm and everything's so peaceful, and you can just see everything reflected off of the waters. And then sometimes you're on the river and it's like white caps and just super harsh, right, and hard. And, but it's really about the tools that you gain, right? So you use ancestral tools to like navigate that. You use tools that you've learned more modern, or not modern, but like today type of tools, whether they're instruments, technical instruments, or even just like how to go into a meditation or breathe deeply, those kinds of tools. So really it's about like, learning tools and strategies to be able to navigate when challenges happen, because, what I've learned from the elders is that's just how wellness goes, right? And so you have times when you feel more balanced and optimal, and then you have times when the world gets really challenging. But together utilizing those tools is really important, and also thinking about context. The environment that we have right around us is what impacts our wellness, and so I think that. I think about things like, self-care, where, if you think about self-care, that's something like just trying to take care of yourself so that you don't get too exhausted or sick or burnt out in your work. But so much these days, I think an Indigenous perspective would be like building a culture of care, a community of care, where just like Jessica was talking about, where we are supporting each other and using the tools together. And that's why I'm really, really interested in these days, because I think that, whether we're working in organizations or just living in communities, these are things that we can practice together. And our ancestors and our elders, they yearn for community. They model for us how to be in connection to spirit and to each other and to the land. They show us deep compassion, and how to be compassionate people, and how to be in ceremony. And I think all of those things, how to be curious, those are things that I've kind of gained over the years, just things that elders really highlight that are super important to our well-being. And but the big pieces, I think, is as we learn these tools, we share them and we practice them. We have to practice them, and as we go through difficult things, we practice them together as a community. Self-care is good, but community care also has to be there. So I feel like we as Indigenous people really have a lot to share about that and what that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different perspectives, like especially coming out of the pandemic, people would advocate for themselves through self-care, and then you sort of like, well, am I being selfish, or is this the best thing for my family or my community? Trying to come to terms with that. It's something I've definitely gone through myself also. Again, trying to be in a way that I can support and give, but sustain, and take the time I need to go on a walk or do some of the things that I like to do that makes me still remain dewy. So I understand there was a gathering here last summer. I didn't get the chance to be there because I was traveling, but would you both share a little bit about that?
You gonna start?
Through Danakanaga, right?
Yeah. Jessica and I actually have been working on a couple of different projects. And so maybe about 4 years ago, we had a research funded project that was called Awakening the Spirit. And I actually got that term from Sam Demientieff, who I know you talked to recently. If you're out there, hi Sam. And I think about him, and one of the things he talked about is his dad shared with him is that, when you practice your culture, and he was speaking specifically about drumming and singing, he said your spirit awakens, and I just love that so much because it really truly is, I think, how I feel. When you hear the drum or you see children dancing, like something within you just pulls, and just like the pride and the joy and the tears and like it's all just connected. And so we started this research project with Danakanaga and another community where we were looking at and exploring like how do cultural practices, how are we practicing our culture in kind of our fast-paced modern society today. And we got a chance just to have conversations with a lot of elders, and the elders at Danakanaga really came away with this idea that, because of some of the loss and some of the trauma that happened, they really wanted to support up and coming elders to step into their roles as elders. And so they said, they really wanted to see something like a camp, like a culture camp for elders, where we were all just, older elders or elders that had something to share, would share with these younger elders in an effort to do what we've kind of been talking about, which is that learn something, practice it, and share it forward so that these can go on into the future. And so from that initial project, we got funding through the Office of Minority Health, a grant that's called CIHI. It's Center for Indigenous Health Equity. And we were able to support Danakanaga in putting on a camp last summer in which maybe 50 people participated in, give or take maybe a little bit more, and we're able to create a space, just a loving space of sharing. And we had things like moose hide tanning, people were filleting fish, people got to take home fish. We collected roots out at Howard Luke's camp, and other plants, and people made salves, and there was
values.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there was an amazing values discussion. That's another thing that the elders really wanted to see happen, is they wanted us to start having conversations about values and how, so that's not just a poster on our wall, but that we're really having these reflections and conversations about what do our values look like in everyday action. And so we just had this beautiful discussion for the whole 3 days around values. And so there were, all kinds of things happening at this camp. And people, I think, some of the elders, really young elders, coming to this space. We're just really grateful to be able to sometimes learn for the first time some things, and also to share what they know, because they were coming with so much wisdom around other things. And so it was just like this great experience. And I don't know if you want to add to that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I would say thank you for that. It was very comprehensive. And it's been like, I think just to reinforce what you've shared is, you know, we're both researchers, but really we're from our communities. And so our passions are really rooted in our own values to see our knowledge shared and into the future. You know, living our well-being, essentially, not seeking this, you know, end point, but living it daily, and helping to support a culture camp allowed us to do that. I think the beauty of it too was that, you know, we have built a strong relationship with the Nakanaga, and we knew from the very beginning that we would be guided by what the elders wanted to do. And that has been so awesome, because it's all worked out. Like, and I think we both agree, like, we don't really stress. I mean, there might be moments of stress of like putting things together, making sure the funding's
It's with
in
any
place.
event.
Yeah. But really just trusting the process. And it was just so much laughter and joy and healing. In fact, at the end of the day, nobody really wanted to leave. It was just kind of like, well, you guys can stay, but
Just
we're going to
linger.
clean up, you know? And that really tells you something, right? That things are going right. And like LaVerne said, I think even one of the visitors to the Morris Thompson Center where it was hosted, he was just happening to walk through and look at things. I don't remember where he was from. And he came in and cut a fish, which we weren't really planning for, but like he felt the laughter, the joy, and sort of was gravitating towards that energy. But the elders had fun. You know, we did caribou tufting. And at the end, it was really amazing because LaVerne and I got to listen to the elders reflect on the experience and the memories. And, you know, like we had shared at the beginning of this talk, there is this traumatic history with Indigenous people in Alaska that we cannot overlook. It has had such an incredible impact on our people, and we're still healing from it, right? And so elders reflected upon you know, their own boarding school experiences, their own, you know, experiences with not being able to fully learn what they wanted to learn, and the ability to do that in safe, sacred space was really profound for them. So, I mean, what more could we really ask for, right? I was like, I felt like so fulfilled and more. And then at the end they said, well, you know, they started planning for this year. And we hadn't even really decided we were going to do this year. We wanted to if we had the funding, but they decided. And so we said, we'll find the funding. We'll figure this out. So it's going to be happening this summer. So it's really exciting.
End of July.
Awesome. So what was some of their feedback towards the end about maybe future preparations or what they'd like to see more of?
Yeah, there was some great feedback. I think that, you know, one of the things that they asked for, and what's going to happen this coming year, I believe, and we're still trying to kind of get that set, are things like canoe building, so net mending, net making and mending. They wanted to see other things. So there was, I think we're going to end up doing, well, we're hoping, and we'll see how it works out, but we're really hoping to spend more time at camp, which was the other kind of things that the elders wanted to really be on the land as much as possible. And so they asked for a little bit longer time, because last year we just spent a day at Howard Luke's camp, and we'll see what happens this year. But just being out on the land, I think, was as we're doing these things, that was one of their suggestions. There was just also so much gratitude in the gathering process. So, I mean, I think just coming together and being with each other, I really appreciated, you know, the vulnerability that it takes, you know, to come to a space where you hadn't, you know, and try something that you had never you haven't done, maybe you've seen other people doing, but you know, for me, I know that, you know, there's a lot of things I didn't grow up doing, and that sometimes can feel, it just can feel painful, and there's some grief attached to that, and there's also, you know, I think, you know, just feelings of like doing it wrong, and so I just was really grateful that we created a space where people could come and just, with love and support each other in learning these things that we can, you know, we can learn our whole lives. We can learn things our whole lives, and the idea again is just to share it forward. I don't know if there's anything else that, the takeaways. There was lots of takeaways, and I hope we're actually going to go to the Nakanaga conference in June and present on some of the outcomes. So we hope to kind of have that more put together and be able to share what were some of the outcomes from the elders. But there was
it going to be in Huslia this year?
Yeah, it'll be in Huslia.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's so amazing. I always think about, too, when there's those types of gatherings, how we model how we are with each other for our next generation. It's kind of like, let's imagine the best of what we want and create like a version of it, and then we can grow and amplify it. And I think about that too with my involvement with Molly of Denali. You know, you have this fictional setting, but you can always like dream of like what you want in real life to see more of. And I'm percolating on story ideas about in the future what we can include more of. So this is helping me with that. There's a lot of issues that I want to bring to a younger audience. It's pretty incredible how these things have become so normalized for some of our kids, like seeing hide tanning and scraping going on. And, you know, for me, myself, my parents prioritized Western education. So I did go and get my papers, you know, degrees and whatnot. And it wasn't until I was an adult in my 20s and even 30s before I had my, you know, first fish, first moose, and all these milestones where I might have had it earlier if I was in my home community, if there was a structure where my family decided to stay there and raise us there, but they decided to move to town. So even in my own life, I'm thinking about some of these milestones that I've gone through and what we can lay out for our kids and future generations. There's the tangible things, but also the whole spiritual side, and something I'm hoping that's going to be more okay to talk about and explore is asking for help through healing through our traditional practices. And just the other day I was reflecting with a group of language mentors and apprentices how my greatest aspiration is to understand my ancestors when they come to me in my dreams. And I actually had a dream the other night, and I could understand what she was saying, and she was so loving, and, you know, may you live a long life, and all these encouragements came through when I didn't really specifically, I don't know if I specifically called out for that or asked for it, but it came to me when I needed it. And that type of higher self we're talking about, it's like a muscle that you could train. And I really hope that that's an area that we can be more open about as people too.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that I think across our communities, you hear of people our age talking about how their elders told them, you know, you have a gift. Well, this is the way it was told to me, like everybody has a gift. And I remember telling my grandma, well, what's my gift? And she said, you'll know when you know. And I said, what do you mean? Like, you just told me that I'm going to have a gift. And she said, you have to like live your life, and you know, these gifts are, you have to pay attention, you have to be aware. And so one of those gifts is the ability to enter into this dream space, right, where you connect with your ancestors, and you're guided in, you know, whether it's like a really difficult time in your life and they come to you and things kind of work out. They may not always be the way that you want them to, but like there is a path, right? Or maybe it's a relative that has passed on. I know when my cousin passed away, I was devastated. We were, 9 months apart. We grew up together. And when he finally came to visit me, he was so happy. And he was like, just like he was in real life, he was like funny and fun and like made us laugh all the time. And that's the way he was in the dream. And he said, I'm good. And I just woke up feeling so like, I can't even describe the feeling really. I just felt like it's okay. He's good and he's with me. And this dream space is such a powerful space. And there's actually like a lot of research coming out now too within Native scholars and academia that shows like dream work is really important, that we take the time to like stop and like listen to our dreams. Because, not everybody has that too, right? It may not be your gift, right? Some people say, I don't even remember any of my dreams, whereas other people, it's very vivid for them. So it doesn't make us better than anyone. If you don't have those vivid dreams, your gift may be your ability to learn and speak languages, right? So we all have gifts, and that's a very important part of culture, is recognizing those gifts. But if you don't slow down, right, if you're just living minute to minute, you may not have that ability to sit and listen to yourself and your ancestors that are trying to show you your gift. I think of people in our villages, or here in Fairbanks, wherever they live, driving a boat, navigating the river. Some people just, it's like their gift. Yes, you can learn that, of course. But like some people just have that intuition for the shortcut, or they've been reading the river so long, they also have that natural ability. It's such a beautiful thing. It's a very important part of our culture, and you're right. We need to make this space to talk about these things, because those are other ceremonies and practices that were sort of put to sleep, that we haven't fully reawakened, but they're there waiting for us essentially to step into them, to recognize them, to talk about, really. So it's really amazing to think about.
Do you have any reflections or at this time?
Well, so many. I think, I was listening to Jessica, and my uncle has taught me a lot. And one of the things that he said, is that, and he said, we've had to put our cultural practices under the table to protect them, but it's time for us to really pull them out and put them on the table and utilize them for our well-being. And I just think about that a lot. I think also about, he came to me, a few years back. Maybe it was like 7 or 8 years back, and he said that he was concerned about me working up at the university in organizations where we can, so much of what we do is in our head, right? We're thinking about the day, and we're thinking about the planning and worrying and the deadlines and writing and how we're engaging. And he said, I want you to practice every day moving from your head to your heart, and so that you don't miss like the signs that you're not feeling well or you're too exhausted or things like that. And it was the best advice I'd ever been given. And I started doing that, just trying to be really intentional in my work from that kind of heart space. I started feeling more connected to my students and more connected to my colleagues, more compassionate for myself, more compassionate for others. And that was so powerful for me. I think, as someone that, with, some of the trauma history in my past and things like that, and historically, sometimes I can come to spaces feeling really still with holding a lot of grief, and I
Sure.
think I'm not feeling worthy and things like that. And the more that I learn about my culture, the stronger my identity is. And I just think back to my aunt Rose, who I grew up with her telling me, that the women in our family are powerful. They're so strong, and that runs through me. And that really just keeps me going. It's just a powerful, powerful thing. And if we look back to our ancestors and some of the things that they did, that their strength, physical and spiritual and mental strength, literally run through our bodies today. And so that's something I think that we can hold on to and recognize, like that is within us. A lot of people look back and they think about the trauma that gets passed forward, but the strengths and the beauty get passed forward within ourselves as well, and can really be add to our wellness. And I guess the last thing I would say is focused around kind of what I talked about earlier, just like not knowing everything or making mistakes. I am learning the language. I facilitate language classes, and I think that I've done enough, not enough. I've done a lot of work in just learning about myself and my culture, and realize it's okay to make mistakes. And I think that that's where we learn the best sometimes, is just a mistake that happens. And, still making the attempt. It's okay not to be right. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to get it wrong. I think that, that is... It's just being human, and so I just encourage, if you're interested in learning like a cultural practice or learning your language, that really finding that heart space, that love for yourself and that love for each other, that when we bring that to these spaces, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to be imperfect, it's okay to have that history that we have, that doesn't take anything away from us. So.
I see. What came into my mind a little bit as you were just speaking now was Sitsurel Lillian told me, Koi, you gotta have a good mind. And I kind of knew what she was referring to, but over the years I've interpreted it in different ways. And one of them is being encouraging to myself inside my own head. If I'm feeling stressed out or overwhelmed, or even if I have a good day or accomplish something, I'll tell myself, "Good job, Dewey," pump myself up a little bit, and I try to steer my daughter in that direction too, because if someone ever talks down on themselves, there is a physical internal effect that it can happen. And we got to remember that, our minds and our bodies are reinforcing one another, and so I think that's why, and our energy reflects in what we do. So that's why I was told too, don't work on food if you're really upset or angry. It'll taste bum to other people. Things like that. There's little pieces of advice that have been given over the years, and really appreciate the depths that you both have gone to share your experience and to encourage others. With this segment, we always try to include a message to our young people, and so I would invite you both to take turns if you have any specific things you want our young leaders to focus on or take away from this discussion. I'd invite you each to take a turn sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Dewey. And mine's going to sort of be in a line with what you were just saying about the affirmations to yourself, you're doing good or you got this. Just to our youth, you are worthy, period. Mm-hmm. You are worthy, you are important. And for me, like I said, I'm more in an auntie role now, and I'm a mother, is that, you're really important to us, all of us on this stage. Your life, your contributions that you make, whether that's in the creative realm of like social media platforms or your beadwork or just being you in this world, however you show up, is really important to us. And we love you, we value you, and you don't have to change. You can just be who you are. I think that's really important, because I think growing up for me, you know, in high school, there was just like such a strong emphasis on education, like getting out of the village, going to college. And I look back on my life and so I was aspiring to be smart and get a scholarship and go be something in college. Well, I already was something, you know, I was something that I could be proud of. I'm like, you know, a person of my community. I grew up in Nenana and I was really proud of my community. I was from Fort Yukon. I loved to sing and dance. I loved my people. Like, just be who you are. That's all you need to be. And yes, of course, it's good to set goals and have like something to look forward to, but you don't have to change to be worthy. You are worthy just the way you are, and we love you. And your life, your presence on this earth means a lot to each one of us. And we, you know, I love kids. I love young people. And I have, like I said, I'm a mother, but like all young people are precious to me. And I just want them to know how much they are loved and valued. And we need you. We need your creativity. We need your like spark in this life to keep us going, because we're kind of in that time of our life of like working and keeping things moving. And it's so fun when we have, you know, a young person come and sort of spice it up for us and help us think of things differently. And that's kind of just be who you are, and your presence alone is more than enough. So thank you.
Merci.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I just love that so much. I think I just agree with everything that you said. And I remember hearing a few years back Yvonne Peter say, you know, being who you are is one of the most powerful things that you can do in the world. And I just think, I was just like, yes, it's so good. And, you know, and I think we are really trying to create and support spaces more these days than ever before, where people can just be who they are. And it's so needed and important, because that's actually, the more that we are, who we were meant to be, living out our purpose, being connected to whoever we are, right? The more that we're in that space, that's where our strength lies. That's where we get our creativity and our confidence and our, you know, all of that comes through 10 times better if we can be who we are. And I just want to support that. I think that, you know, at the university and in other spaces, you know, there's always work to do to support those spaces. And I think that's just where we're at in our society, and it's a reality. But, you know, the more that we can promote that in all spaces, I think the stronger we will be as a people, for people to be who they are. And that's maybe just one thing I would share, along with, you know, recognizing that your ancestors, and I've heard this like a number of times, but someone just recently told it to me too, just that our ancestors are, you know, that they prayed for us to be healthy and whole and happy people, and practicing our cultural traditions, and that was their goal. And so, you know, with Creator, they really created these ceremonies that help us live in this life, in the world. And so, you know, learning them and using them, and sometimes it may feel like we just don't know, or we're disconnected. But anytime an elder talks to you, there's something there that you may not maybe even understand at that moment, or even maybe 5 years later, but at some point in your life, that information is going to come back to you and help you. So I just, again, slowing down enough to sometimes just hear those things, and remember them, or just being around elders and being around like the Festival of Native Arts, attending that, and other things. I think all of those things plant like seeds within us for wellness, and sometimes we don't connect to them right away, but throughout our lives we are able to come back to them and utilize them for our health. And it's hard to imagine and think about, but yeah, I just want to say sometimes it feels like we are disconnected, but we have so much within us. So yeah, thank you.
So grateful for your thoughts and energy and encouragement, and I wish you both the best in your work and keeping our communities strong is, of course, a lifelong effort. And I just want to encourage you both and say I'm very proud of the work you're doing. And I'm so happy that we could explore these teachings and things that are so vital to who we are as Indigenous peoples, and of course share it with others. So any closing remarks before we end our session today?
Hashtag I'm grateful for you too, Dewey.
Yeah, you too, Jessica. Same. Masicho.
Basi. So that concludes today's episode. Keep a lookout on our social media channels for future. Na basi, adawoya ni galachtenik. You all take good care, and we'll see you next time.